What's up, everybody? Matt Gajewski here, back again with the Awesemo channel, talking some college football DFS. It is Wednesday, October the 20th. We have a single game. It is the undefeated Coastal Carolina Chanticleers taking on Appalachian State. We will get into everything you need to know. But before we get started, make sure to hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you know when this and all other content goes live. Let's bring you behind the glass, show you some of the tools we have at Awesemo. Here is our player usage data tool where you can take a look at some opportunity for all players. We also have everything from ownership projections, regular projections, slate write-ups, everything you need to know to dominate these college football slates. So we are talking showdown, quick game up, quick game down. Coastal Carolina, they have taken a ton of money early in the week. Sitting at -4 here, you will find this upwards of -5.5 in Coastal Carolina's favor. A 60-point total overall. Money coming in towards the over here. For the betting markets, did lay 3.5 with Coastal Carolina, and I'm comfortable with this around 4.5 if you can grab it. In this game, basically, you have a Coastal Carolina team that plays very slow, run-heavy football, a lot of power and option schemes as they are a little bit methodical. They are undefeated. Now, they have not played a great slate of opponents to start the year, but they come into this game as the favorites. App State, conversely, they're actually playing faster and pass heavier than a year ago, but they're still just slightly above average in terms of pace, slightly below average in terms of pass rate. But we just saw them last week get absolutely blown out by Louisiana Lafayette. Fortunately, they do get this game at home. For DFS purposes, Grayson Mccall is the single most expensive player on this slate, and for good reason. He is a strong dual threat quarterback overall. While his rushing production has been somewhat limited this year, a lot of that comes down to opponents. He's been pulled in a lot of games, and he did suffer an ankle injury about 3 weeks ago that he has subsequently been recovering from. So Grayson Mccall is going to be a nice dual threat option we can certainly go to. In the pass game, he's also been very efficient, averaging 246 yards per game on just 18 attempts. This is the closest game, at least projected game, Coastal Carolina will have played this year. So we should see at least some uptick in volume for Mccall, making him a very safe play. App State is middling in both their pass defense and run defense, so there's no pure matchup exploitation, but luckily Grayson Mccall active in both phases of the game. In the run game, you had Shamari Jones return from injury last week. He'd been in a near 50-50 timeshare with Reese White to start the year. We've even seen Shamari Jones play more at times, and now he comes in significantly cheaper than Reese White. For a 50-50 timeshare, just taking the cheaper back in Shamari Jones is going to make sense in most instances, outside of just contrarian builds where you're playing Reese White for the sake of maybe taking a little bit of an edge in ownership. You can also play them in the same lineup together. We've seen games where both of them get enough work to pay off their salaries, whether through efficiency or pure volume. Both backs are fine. And Braden Bennett is their third back. They'll actually use him a lot as a pass catcher. He's been a lot more involved recently, but that coincides with Shamari Jones' injury. Prior to the injury, Braden Bennett was basically a seldom used change of pace back. He is still an option here if there's an alternate game script where Coastal Carolina gets up by like 10 or so points and Bennett sees additional work, but Reese White and Shamari Jones should handle most of the backfield. In the receiving game, very easy, narrow target distribution to decipher here. Javion Hiley is their number one, very expensive, but he has a 26% target share. That has dropped in recent weeks. You saw Isaiah Likely, their explosive tight end, just exploit a huge mismatch against Arkansas State last week. Erupts for 200 yards. Likely and Hiley are two of the most efficient pass catchers in the country. Their level of competition leaves a lot to be desired, but the target share is clear between the two, both above 25%, both pretty easy to target here. Hiley is a little bit of a buy low, but he is expensive. He is the better play on FanDuel, where there's just a 500 price difference between them. On DraftKings, Likely is going to save you a lot of money there, but both are in play. Perhaps the most expensive player and overpriced player on the entire slate is Cameron Brown. Extremely expensive over on DraftKings. There's just no reason he should be more expensive than Likely, who has a higher target share, easily more yards on the year. Just doesn't make a lot of sense here for Cameron Brown to be as expensive as he is. The wide receiver 3 is split between Tyson Mobley and Greg Latushko. Both of them are just pure GPP dart throws if you're playing large field tournaments tonight. On the App State side, Chase Bryce has been up and down basically throughout his career, starting with Clemson, moving to Duke, and now the quarterback of App State. He is somewhat mobile, 41 yards on the ground, but he'll take a lot of sacks, certainly less mobile than Grayson Mccall on the other side. And what's really benefited Bryce is pure volume. He averages nearly the same passing yards as Grayson Mccall, but he has nearly double the attempts. 30 attempts per game for Bryce, only 18 for Grayson Mccall. You can see he's just living through pure volume overall, and that makes him fine for flex position plays. I think if Chase Bryce sees more volume, he could be a viable captain here as well. In the run game, we're dealing with an injury to Cameron Peoples, and unfortunately for DFS players, App State has one of the worst beats in the country. You're not going to hear information, potentially even who's warming up in this game, which makes Peoples a really dicey play. Even when Peoples is active, he's in a 50-50 timeshare with Nate Noel. And recently, Noel has basically functioned as the pure bell cow back without Peoples in the lineup. Last week, Noel, 17 carries. No other back had more than 3 on the day. So Noel basically is a 50-50 timeshare player with Peoples at worst, is going to be a very strong price-adjusted play at 7,800. People should come in with low ownership, not only because of price, but because of the injury tag. In contrarian builds, if active, Peoples could easily have a ceiling performance here. For what it's worth, Noel has been more efficient and seen slightly more work on the year. The running backs outside of Noel, assuming Peoples sits, would be some combination of Daytrich Harrington and Jameer Smith. Harrington, he returned to the lineup for the first time since season-ending injury last year. Only 2 carries, but he's a player that's been heavily involved for them in the past. They should slowly start to ramp him up as long as there's no setbacks or efficiency declines. But Harrington is a player in GPP dart throw scenarios where maybe he sees more work moving forward based on his previous role, and he's just further removed from the injury. In the receiving game, Corey Sutton's price is just flat out too cheap here. He is their alpha receiver. It shows up in target share where he has a 30% target share, yards per game, 81.5. If you can afford Sutton, he's the number 1 play. From there, Malik Williams has sort of reasserted himself as the wide receiver 2, just slightly ahead of Thomas Hennigan recently. Out-targeted him 8-3 last week. Very, very much so more efficient than him. But ultimately, both are running nearly the same amount of routes. So just at a cheaper price, Malik Williams is going to make a little more sense here. But Hennigan, because he is so involved here too, he has to be at least considered for contrarian builds. Hennigan has slightly more yardage on the year than Malik Williams, but both of them have traded off big games. The wide receiver 3-4, I guess you should say, for this team, Jalen Virgil, he came back from injury, but he's still just a pure part-time player. He's going to split time with Deshaun Davis, neither of whom are particularly strong plays, but in tournaments, they're on the field a little bit, so they should be considered. And outside of that, Henry Pearson's their main tight end. Very cheap, but he does not play a consistent role. So he's another just pure dart throw to mention for this contest. But overall, trying to play Noel, the apps or the Coastal Carolina backs, looking at Sutton, Hiley, Williams, Hennigan, those type of players, likely, of course, in the quarterbacks. But that will do it for us at Awesemo. Thank you guys for watching. Let me know your favorite play in the comment section. I'm Matt Gajewski on Twitter at @_Gajewski. We will see you guys again next time.